today? Waiting for a couple guys to jump in here. Was just live over on the Instagram and figured I'd jump over here real quick and do a live. Been a while since I've been over here. And talk about something cool that's coming up. For those of you guys watching the replay, I appreciate you. Thanks for hanging in there. These lives always feel like you're talking to yourself for the first, couple minutes. It's kind of funny. And I just hate to sit here and drink a beer and just stare at the numbers at the top of the screen. I think it's kind of funny when people do that. But anyway, yeah, while some people are jumping in here, welcome aboard. I'm Frank Cox. I'm known as the Barbecue Pit Engineer, and this is the Smoker Builder YouTube channel. So I figured I'd jump on here real quick. What I'm going to do as I get notifications here is swipe them off. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk about something that's coming up over on our private community called smokerbuilderu.com. That's smokerbuilder, the letter U.com. And if you haven't ever been on there, it's free to join. It's our private behind-the-scenes community where a bunch of geeks like us that talk nothing about, only we talk about building cookers and cooking on them and stuff like that, and answer all kinds of questions people have, help them out. We have some online courses on there, and what I'm doing, by the way, I'm going to try to figure out how to watch the chat on here. If you're here and you have the ability to drop a comment in the chat, please do so I can tell that it's working. But anyway, there it is, Front Yard. What's up, man? I'll give you a shout out too when you make a comment. So he's first one on the new road. What's up, Bradley? How you doing? So anyway, what we do is over on Smoker Builder U. If you haven't joined already, it's free. But there's tons of value in there from not just myself, but other guys that are active in the community. And we just launched some online courses this last year. One of which is going to launch in 2 weeks. We used to do in-person welding classes and at our shop here. And the welding classes were very successful. We always had about 4 to 6 guys in it. And, we spent a really, really long day going very deep over a whole lot of information. And, it was great to be able to have us there for the students that we can watch everything that's happening and stuff like that. However, you were flat worn out by the end of the day. Some of those guys that were in those classes wanted to comment if they're watching. That would be great. They can tell you how that experience went. But long story short is the other part of the problem is that, people had to make a lot of plans to travel. We had guys from New York, California, Colorado, you name it. They were here, Florida. And what happened is that, it cost quite a bit of money to come up. You had to have a place to stay. And you weren't just staying one night, you had to stay 2 because the class was so long and stuff like that. So what we decided right then and there is that the class is too good to limit it to 4 to 6 people in a classroom. And we want to be able to help as many people as we can without it costing them a bunch of money to come to our shop. So what we decided to do is make that available on Smoker Builder U. So the website Smoker Builder U kind of is like a Facebook platform, but it's not on Facebook. That's the beauty of it. So you don't have to deal with all the Facebook stuff. And we're completely in control. It's our own domain. It's not a whole bunch of other people's stuff on there. So it's on a platform called Mighty Networks. And there's an app for your phone to use, which makes it super convenient. But inside there, we're able to keep the content kind of like an old forum where you had categories of the content, and that's super cool from the old hats like me that kind of grew up in barbecue on those forums, and they're harder to maintain these days. But Mighty Networks makes it like super easy for guys like me to manage a community like that. While also delivering maximum value to the community. So the beautiful thing is about that platform is you've got spaces, which spaces are kind of like groups, and each one of those groups are dedicated to certain kinds of content. Among those spaces, we're able to make courses, and the online courses are self-paced. They also have a chat stream in there where you can like make posts and post pictures of your welds or your food or your cooker. You can also even write up what's called articles, which are much more in depth. You can post multiple pictures, even videos in an article. And if you join up over there, you'll get access to all of that for free. The courses, however, there's several. Right now we have a fire management course that's totally free. You can join up, and it's a bunch of different kinds of cookers that we were able to film content on how to run an offset smoker, how to run a reverse flow smoker. And then we've got a lot of info on there about how to start your fires and maintain them, amp them up, shut them down. I also just launched a wood identification, module on there. And then now we're adding this MIG Welding 101 course, which is what we're here talking about today. So that is the online version of our live and in-person welding class. The only thing about it is that we've been able to spend more time on the details of the class. So we can bring you more of that content through screen shares, through after the fact posts, stuff like that. So it's open right now to our beta testers inside the platform, and they're running it through the paces, making sure that the content makes sense and that it's applicable to a guy that's new to welding. Some of those guys are new to welding, so they're going to give that perspective as well. Another thing we're able to do in there is make PDF downloads. So you can download literally a copy of the slideshow and stay tuned and like make notes on it. We also have, transcripts that we can download and stuff like that. So hopefully you'll find that valuable. By the way, feel totally free to drop any questions you have about building smokers or welding or running pits down in the chat down there. I am watching that. Good to see you, CD. Thanks for joining. Glad you're here. So anyway, the other thing that's in that Smoker Builder U that I always forget to talk about, there's other online courses in there as well. But one in particular that I'm super proud of is the Barbecue Pit Engineering with Frank classes. And what those are is live Zoom calls that we had where we recorded my screen share along with the students that were in the class, and we made those replays available in there as well. Those replays, they're a big watch, like they're all an hour, 2 hours long, something like that. And then the Q&A sessions from those Zoom calls are at the very bottom, full of information. Like I love it whenever I'm able to sit in there and whiteboard draw right on the screen that I'm sharing, like a picture, and I'm able to start drawing all over the picture and show you how the air moves and show you why it's important to have a big enough firebox and what happens if you put a baffle in this spot and move air around, and velocity, volume, all of these engineering terms that we've learned in the trades all these years, and how they apply to building a smoker that's right for you. That's a big deal right there. We used to believe that there was one way to build a smoker, and that one way had characteristics about it that were important. Like you had to have this ratio of firebox to this ratio of cook chamber. You had to have this kind of smokestack, and different scenarios like that. And what we found over the time is that there's actually benefits to stepping outside of that mold a little bit, but how to explain what happens when you step outside that mold. For instance, if you have a smaller firebox because you just had that material available, how do you compensate if your firebox is 80% what it should be instead of 107? What does it do to your fire management? What does it do to your temperature control? Stuff like that. And we cover all of that in the Barbecue Pit Engineering with Frank courses in there. So anyway, I invite you to go over there and hang out with us and participate in the program there. We got us our first little question here in the Q&A. Let's see, would you see a problem putting an extra top door on 500-gallon round firebox for grilling reverse sear? There you go. That's a great question. So what we're talking about here is commonly known as a cowboy style firebox mod, which is on the firebox, the door opens up, and if you wanted to grill right in the firebox, you could. So the setback would be that you're asking, we're going to give both sides, the benefits and the not benefits, right? So actually, let me flip it around because I'm a very positive human and I want to give the benefits first. The benefits would be that you don't have to build a grill. That's awesome. You could compromise there a little bit. However, and you might be able to load your wood or whatever from the top, which some people think that's a benefit. However, the compromises of a situation like that would be like this. You're going to have another door that's actually on top of the firebox that could leak. Now, a door on the end of the firebox, we don't care if it leaks. It's not a big deal. It's going to suck more air in. Door on top of the firebox, now we're going to let air do what it naturally wants to do, which is leave the firebox. So if you wind up with a door on a 500-gallon firebox, I wouldn't imagine that you're going to have any warpage in that door. However, it could be tough depending on how those things work. If you watch some of our other videos where, tanks warp and doors don't fit and stuff like that. The other thing is like you're always going to be using the firebox for grilling, searing, or the firebox for cooking in the main chamber. It's going to be really hard to use that firebox in both scenarios. So something I've done a few times, whenever I'm cooking, like I'm camping somewhere or we're cooking for a crowd of people and I just want to make a quick lunch or something, I'll actually just use an iron skillet and put it right inside the firebox through the firebox door. On a pit that big, 500-gallon cook chamber, your firebox is going to be significantly sized, which means you're going to have a pretty good size firebox door. And you can literally just make like a little rack that sits in the firebox if you just wanted to quick set a skillet in there, or just push coals if you're burning on the bottom. You could like push coals over and use it just like a traditional cast iron situation. So that's how I would compensate in that scenario. Oftentimes though, if you're cooking with cast iron or something like that, you really just need like heat. You don't really need, like convective heat. So in that scenario, you could shovel a little bit of coals out, put them down inside like a brick scenario and use your cast iron like that. That's kind of, I don't really see a problem with it. I just see compromises is what I see. That's a great question. There's other stuff we could cover about that too, but I want to answer another question. So as far as like cook chamber temps and really reverse searing and stuff like that, and the effects of it on the cooking process, which you can get better results, I think, in a smaller pit in that scenario. But on a 500-gallon, it's so big, I just don't think that would be real practical. Eric Peterson asks, thanks for joining, Eric. Are there any downsides to running an oversized firebox? In this scenario, what I would say is it's completely dependent on the size of the cook chamber, and the style of smoker. So in a reverse flow, you're going to notice an oversized firebox quicker than you will in an offset. Now the reason I say the rules are so much more intense on a reverse flow is because of where we're adding restriction to the flow inside the cook chamber for getting the maximum heat result out of that. Like we want to be able to get that even cook chamber temp. We do that using radiant heat absorbing that heat into the baffle plate, which means we got to slow the air down under the plate so that we can get that heat into the plate evenly and maximize that conductive, where that heat radiates into that plate. So that means we're going to crank down on the throat size or the baffle plate gap at the end of that plate. That all has to do with having the right amount of air volume delivered at the right time with the right size fire. It's a really delicate balance. And the reason it's a delicate balance is so that we don't wind up cooling the airstream off too much, too early, and winding up with condensation in the airstream. So whenever we go into an offset, however, not a big deal at all. You can actually oversize by 15% or 20% in a firebox, and it'll actually help in some like high wind scenarios. We actually did that on the solution pit. Our firebox is significantly bigger than I would normally run on that size offset. By the way, the solution offset is the one I launched with Mad Scientist Barbecue, the solution offset smoker. Check out Jeremy's channel if you want more info on that. Eric just dropped more comments here. It's a 24 diameter by 4.5 foot cook chamber, so that's pretty good size, with a 24 by 26 firebox. Assuming it's an offset, that's perfect. I wouldn't mess with it at all. On the solution, we're running a 24 diameter by 40 inch cook chamber with a 24 by 24 firebox. So it's over half the length of the cook chamber. It's massive. So that thing absolutely loves to cook. The trade-off is you're going to have to increase your smokestack size when you oversize your firebox. And for those that don't know, I cover a lot of that in the Barbecue Pit Engineering with Frank online classes where we did all those live Zoom calls and recorded and put them up for replay. You know, that scenario is really cool when you're dealing with, like in the scenario we had down at Al Fragoni's place. If you don't follow Al Fragoni, completely recommend you do. But when we were down at Al Fragoni's, Jeremy and I were, that was when that thing really shined, because the way that Al's place is set up, I don't like watch Al's hair blow. In the most recent video with Jeremy, it nonstop, his hair was fluttering in the wind under that carport thing he cooks under. And that wind was like the kind that was just a sheer straight wind that had the same velocity the entire time. And you wind up being out very comfortable in it all day long. But when you walk away, you feel it on your face, you know, if you ever been windburned or whatever. That's kind of how it was down there. And a normal smoker with a properly sized firebox and a properly sized smokestack would have some issues in that scenario, like backdrafting, cross drafting, stuff like that. Having to turn the pit around quite a bit. But once that solution pit got up to temp, it did not care. It got to temp, you just regulated your firebox door and the size of your fire to compensate, and you were setting sail. You know, it was great. It was actually a real joy to cook in that scenario with Jeremy. Also a joy to watch him cook in it, because, you know, he's Jeremy, that's why. So anyway, anybody else got questions? We can sit in here and chat about this for a little bit. I've got, like I said on the last one, I've got this much beer left, so that's how much we can talk. By the way, the beer tonight is Yuengling Light, not the full lager, but the light one. Awesome. Glad we could help, Eric. So I would totally run with that as long as it's an offset. If it's a reverse flow, 103 to 115% on the calculator is the right number. You'd find that at bbqpitcalculator.com. You can also use the Felden calculator. We all got our numbers from the same place back in the day. We just tell you different ways to use those numbers. Matter of fact, the readouts are almost identical. It's just different applications with those numbers. For instance, they believe totally different than me on the throat size and the baffle plate gap. Those guys were on an old forum called the Smoke Ring. That's where this all came from, was from Alien Barbecue, which is some old school guys that made a spreadsheet back in the day. That's where all the pit calculators came from. We all got our numbers from those original numbers. So shout out to Alien Barbecue for deciding what the right numbers was, so that we can all play with it and have a starting place. That was awesome. So all that stuff's dead now. You can't even find it anywhere. I have a copy of the original spreadsheet. I've thought about making available to people. Let's see. Front yard barbecue. Let's see what you got, bro. Is it easier to run a smaller or bigger smoker? Currently using one made from a 100-pound propane tank. Looking to build a 120 or a 250. Absolutely a breeze easier to run a big pit if in fact it's built properly. In other words, what we were just talking about with those numbers, there's good numbers, and then there's the wrong way, which the wrong way is always going too small on Firebox, too small on Smokestack, stuff like that. Too small on the transfer, which is the throat opening and stuff like that. Smaller pits, the reason they're so hard to run is because of, first of all, most of them have a very thin wall. Unless you built it out a 1/4 inch, and like if you used a 100-pound propane tank like Front Yard did here, those are thinner wall. They're usually 1/8 of an inch or thinner, and they don't hold heat as well because of thermal mass, thermal density. Anyway, so without getting off into that, just the wind blowing across it, any way of radiant heat leaving that chamber in bad conditions can fight you a little bit. The second thing is, because we're dealing with such a small amount of air volume that is required to move through that chamber, we have to have a smaller fire. And one way to combat this would be build a big old fire and let it be as leaky as possible. In other words, like you literally could put an extra vent up on top of the firebox and just open it halfway and just let air go, and be sloppy with your fire. Less of that air would go into the cook chamber, and you would probably have an easier experience running that smoker. 120 gallon, that's kind of the breakover point where they start to become a little easier to run. 80 gallon and up, kind of right there. That's about where the solution pit is. And that solution pit's a breeze to run, by the way, not trying to sell you one. Just, I think it's a very well designed pit. I'm very proud of that. But yeah, so when you get up into a 250 though, you're able to run a much bigger coal bed, which is going to help you keep a smaller fire going as far as the amount of wood you put on the pit. You're not going to have to pile wood to it if you design it properly. You're going to be able to run a smaller, much more controlled fire. Like I'm talking two small splits on top of a bed of coals, and come back at a regular pace. You're going to be able to set a watch. You're not going to have a different thing every time you come back to the pit. It's going to be the same set a watch. I literally do an overnight cook. I sleep on the couch in the living room. Bingo's or whatever pit I'm using is out in the driveway. Every 30 minutes, I get about 20 minutes of sleep, get up, go out, basically rake the coals around, throw two splits on, walk back in the door, go back to bed, and I'm out. Being a refrigeration guy, as long as I was able to fall right back asleep, no problem, because I was used to getting up in the middle of the night all the time. And so I'm worn out the next day, but I can pull off those all-night cooks and not like really hurt myself, because I'm able to rely on that pit. 1,000 gallons, when you get up into that, those things can have the fire go out in it. They're so big and so heavy with the steel thickness that it takes about 30 minutes for that thing to like dive. So that's kind of my opinion there. Great question. Bigger is always better, especially if it's designed right. Let's see, Eric Peterson just asked, do you have smoker building classes? There's so much more I could ask you, but don't want to hog your feed. Hey dude, don't worry about it. We're here all the time. That's what we do. But that's what Smoker Builder U is all about. Smokerbuilder, the letter U.com. That is the feed. And, I'm not able to participate in every single conversation, but there's a lot of us in there, and the community is ate up with it just like I am. But not only that, there is Smoker Builder, the pit building, barbecue pit engineering with Frank, those online courses. And I did those live in there, and then I put those, I recorded those Zooms and put them for replay. And those are the classes you're asking about. They literally are. Plus what we're talking about here, the MIG Welding 101 class that's coming up pretty soon. Looks like Mama's out the door. You leaving? Yep. She's leaving me. Anyway, the MIG Welding 101 class drops in about 2 weeks. Super excited about that. We put a lot of energy into that. I think it's going to be the best online welding course for smoker builders out there. I don't think anyone else is going to have it this tight, because all the other ones are teaching you TIG welding, stick welding, uphill, downhill, side to side. You know, like that one guy from Alabama that talks about welding broken hearts to the crack of dawn. You know, we don't need to do none of that. We just got to be able to pull the trigger and run a good bead and get good penetration. And we want to have a pretty weld. And that's what it's going to teach you in that class. All the bloatware is gone. We're not teaching you how to weld pipeline pipe. So there you go. Great question, Eric. Appreciate that. Let's see. Hard Luck 3 asks me, I have a 500-gallon hemispherical tank with 120 upright for a box. I want to set the 120 into the 500 and cut the intake into the top of the 120 so the end would act like a baffle. Thoughts? Let me read that again because I'm trying to draft it out in my mind. By the way, this kind of question is exactly what we enjoy over on Smoker Builder U. And it's even better because you can post a picture of your scenario, even if you just drew it on a napkin and posted it. SmokerBuilderU.com. That's what this is all about. You'll get a ton of feedback in there if you hit it at the right time. So let's see. You got a 500-gallon tank, and it sounds to me like you already have a 120-gallon upright. Oh, okay. So it's an upright. It's a DOT tank that's on its side for the Firebox. You want to set the 120 into the 500 and cut the intake into the top of the 120 so the end would act like a baffle. Thoughts? Exactly. That's a great approach. So what he's talking about is his throat. So you got the domed head. He wants to saddle that end of that head into the hemispherical end of that cook chamber. And then he's wanting to cut his hole basically out of that top quadrant of the Firebox. And that's a great approach. I actually, this 1,000-gallon right over here, that's exactly what I did. We normally would cut that head, most of it off, leave a grease dam at the bottom to prevent grease from going into the Firebox during a cook and causing a nasty grease fire. And then we would put a vertical plate in there. And that's what I did on Bingo. But as we were cutting around on stuff, I was like, you know what, let's just try it once. Let's just see. Matter of fact, my buddy, sorry, I got to itch my foot. My buddy Ryan from Backline Smokers just did this on one of the pits he built for Leroy and Lewis down there, and we were discussing that. They love it. His design's a little different than ours, but essentially he took the same approach. And air wants to go up. That's the bottom line. It just let the hot air go up. That's all we're trying to do with the vertical baffle. We're trying to encourage the air to do what it already wants to do. So don't overthink it too much. Fancy ways of making the air go somewhere it doesn't want to go, it's just going to go around that and then go. Like if you put a downturn baffle and the air comes in and goes under the baffle, guess what it's going to do? As soon as it gets past the baffle, he's going to go straight up. And the way to learn about that is take that whole thing and roll it upside down and pretend like you're filling it with water. This is what Cosmo told me to do one day. He was trying to explain the vertical baffle thing because he's actually the guy that kind of introduced me to it. This is years ago. He said, it's a 5-gallon bucket. Turn it upside down and fill it with water. Like turn the bucket, fill it with water. What's it going to do is the water level comes up, it's going to overflow. Okay, drill a hole farther down the bucket. What's going to happen? It's going to fill up and it's going to come out the hole. Okay, let's do that with a pit. Turn it upside down and fill it with hot air. It's going to go in and it's going to go straight up. That's what it wants to do. And it's going to fill itself from the top down and it's going to find a hole to get out of unless you limit how much can come out the hole at the other end, which is our smokestack with a damper at the very top. Not a damper at the bottom or in the middle, but all the way up at the very top. Now we're going to restrict volume, but encourage velocity from vertical lift. That's what we talk about in that Smoker Builder U stuff. But that throat opening like you're talking, absolutely, it's a great approach. Cook from the top down, you'll never be sorry. That's the kind of stuff we talk about over there. I get excited, can you tell? Yeah, this is it. All right, CD's back. He says, he sent his first comment prematurely, sorry. Say, I'll use half of a 200-gallon tank for the Firebox. Before I buy your plans, I've been debating on the square non-insulated firebox for aesthetic purposes. Gotcha. Let me go back and read your previous question. Yeah, okay, so that's it. So our 500-gallon plans that we just released show using half of a 250, which is 30 inches diameter and 87 inches long, cut in half, right? And the logic there is it's pretty simple. For offsets, we can break the rules a little bit, right? We still want to have a giant firebox so that in bad conditions, we're not limited by our scenario, right? We're able to compensate for bad conditions with the size of a motor we put in the car. If we got to tow a load uphill, we got plenty of horsepower. That's literally the analogy that I used in my last video here on YouTube. So that 250-gallon tank, 250 gallons is half of 500, right? So we use half of that 250 tank. That's a quarter of the volume of the cook chamber. So 25%. That's allowable for an offset, right? So now his question is talking about putting a cowboy firebox door on a 250 like that. And I think you would find some value in it, but I still think you're going to be limited. Like if you're using that cowboy firebox door to actually sear steaks, you're going to limit your cooking ability in the cook chamber simply because of cycling that door on top of the firebox. However, if you were able to open it real quick, put your stuff on, shut it, you might get some value out of it. The other thing to keep in mind though here is that we're dripping a lot of grease down inside that firebox. And when you drip that grease in the firebox, you just got another mess to clean up. So personally, for the amount of energy that goes into that, I would probably harvest the other side of that 250 and make some kind of a awesome grill, like just turn it upside down with the dome head on the bottom, put a grill on there, or even flip it up, cap the bottom off and make a little Weber. That'd be kind of fun. So there you go. Hard Luck says, thanks, you're welcome. And let's see, Eric Peterson here. With the pit I described above, is a 4-inch stack sufficient, or do I need to upsize? Let me go back up and read your other comment there. Oh, 4-inch. We're running a 5-inch stack on the solution. I would normally have said that's too big. And it's actually like pretty good length. I think it's like almost 40 inches, 36 or 40 inches long. So, but yeah, I would totally run a big old stack on that pit and put a damper at the very top, a blade damper that blocks off, you know. So there you go. That's what I would do. 4-inch will work though. If you've got 4-inch laying around, don't be afraid to use it. That's what I was using on the Legend offsets I was making, and they work. But there you go. Well, hey guys, I super appreciate you guys tuning in so long. It's 33 minutes long, this video. Anyway, one more time, I just want to let you know that we are dropping this online course teaching you how to MIG weld for building smokers. Like, this class is specifically designed for the parts of the process you're going to need to know in order to start building pits day one. So you'll be able to, I just started to smell smoke. I wonder what that is. That's not a good thing around here because I ain't running no smoker. But anyway, if you want to learn how to weld specifically for building offset smokers, etc., hop on over to Smoker Builder U, join up for free, and in 2 weeks, whenever I drop the code, you'll get a discount code where you can take advantage of that class ahead of everybody else. It's only going to last, the discount's only going to last for that weekend, and that's it. It's done. And then it'll be the regular price for everybody after that. So get in on the inside scoop. And by the way, if I can ever be of any service to you at all, we're the most accessible barbecue e-commerce company and helping you company on the internet. My name is Frank Cox. You can go to smokerplans.net. There's a chat bubble down there, and I and my wife Lisa actually do all this chat there. So you can get a hold of us there the fastest. You can also call us at the number on that website, and I can't answer the phone every single time, but when I can, I try to, and if not, one of us calls you back. And then you can also go into Smoker Builder U, and participate in the live action like this constantly. And I love it when one more question pops in before I hit the end button. Let's grab it. Boost 89 GT asks, for a 500-gallon propane tank, would you build a conventional offset or a reverse flow? I actually have a podcast all about that on this channel. If you go all the way down, it's probably 3 years ago. Actually, I did a recent version of it a year ago. I redid it. You should watch that one. It's how to choose the right smoker for you, or something is what it's called. But anyway, my personal preference these days, if I'm cooking for texture, appearance, taste, overall result of barbecue, for like a brisket or 5 briskets, I would build the offset all day long. If I'm cooking for production purposes, 100% of the time I would build a reverse flow. Mostly because if you're cooking for the masses, you're going to be able to fill that cook chamber up with more capacity. For instance, a 500-gallon reverse flow with 3 cook chamber racks in the chamber, you're going to be able to fit almost 50 butts in that cook chamber, right? And still get wood burning offset, or smoker there. You're still going to get that offset smoker appeal. The trade-off is it's going to be a lot cleaner smoke flavor. You're not going to get that same texture and appearance, but all of the meat in that cook chamber will get the same texture and appearance. But if you're looking to build bark and render fat and get that awesome flavor and awesome texture and appearance in a select number of briskets, my advice would be to build an offset out of that with 1 layer of cooking grates. And if you need more capacity, build a second pit or a bigger pit, 1,000-gallon. So anyway, there you go, guys. Appreciate you. One more time, please join me over on Smoker Builder U. What's up, Mike Garza? I found your hat, dude. If you believe it or not, it's in the shipping department right now. It should go out. If it didn't go out today, it should go out tomorrow. So anyway, appreciate you, brother. Thanks for checking in here before I hit the kill switch. See you guys over on Smoker Builder U. Take it easy.